At 8:43 a.m., 35-year-old prosecutor Devon Clarke flew into the courthouse parking lot in Albany, New York. The sun was blinding his eyes, but the chill in his chest hinted that this was not going to be an easy day. He was late because of an urgent call about a human trafficking case, and he had an unfair fine on his grandfather's house to fight. But when the judge took it out on him, Devon realized that this wasn't just about being late. It was about something much bigger, and he would not remain silent. The clock on the dashboard blinked 8:43 a.m. as Devon Clarke slammed his foot on the brake, tires screeching against the asphalt of the Albany, New York Municipal Courthouse parking lot. The morning sun glared through the windshield, casting sharp shadows, but a cold knot tightened in Devon's chest. He hated being late. For a 35-year-old federal prosecutor, discipline wasn't just a habit, it was his lifeline. Years of courtroom battles had taught him that timing could make or break a case, and today, he was already behind schedule. His dark gray suit clung to him as he leapt from the car, briefcase in hand, the leather creaking under his grip. This wasn't how the day was supposed to start. It was supposed to be simple. A quick hearing to challenge an inflated fine on the house his grandfather had left him. That house wasn't just brick and mortar. It was where Devon had spent summers learning to fish, where Grandpa James had drilled into him the difference between right and wrong over glasses of sweet tea on the porch. Now, the city had slapped a $1,200 penalty on it, claiming some vague reassessment error. Devon had spent weeks gathering evidence, tax records, property deeds, photos, to prove it was nonsense. He wasn't about to let the city snatch away the one piece of his past that still felt solid. But life had other plans. At 8:15, his phone had buzzed with an urgent call from his team at the U.S. Attorney's Office. A human trafficking case he'd been spearheading for months had hit a snag, a last-minute motion from the defense threatening to derail everything. He'd paced his office, barking orders into the phone, scribbling notes, and glancing at the clock as the minutes bled away. By the time he hung up, it was 8:35, and the courthouse was a 20-minute drive across town. He'd floored it, weaving through traffic, cursing under his breath as the seconds ticked by. Now, sprinting up the courthouse steps, Devon's phone buzzed again. A text from his assistant, Mia. Judge Green's a stickler for punctuality. Watch yourself. He grimaced, shoving the phone into his briefcase. Edward Green had a reputation, tough, old school, and unforgiving. Devon had faced worse, though. Facts were his weapon, and he had plenty. Inside, the courthouse hummed with low-grade chaos. The air smelled of stale coffee and mildew, the beige walls scuffed from decades of shuffled feet. People milled about, some clutching tickets, others muttering over paperwork, their faces tight with worry. Devon checked his watch. 8:55. 5 minutes to spare. He followed the signs to room 108, his polished shoes clicking against the linoleum. The door creaked as he slipped inside, the room already half full. Rows of worn benches stretched toward a raised bench where Judge Edward Green loomed, a broad-shouldered man with thinning gray hair and a stare that could cut glass. Devon slid into a seat near the back, flipping open his briefcase to review his notes. The bailiff's voice boomed, "All rise," and the room shuffled to its feet. Green settled into his chair, his gaze sweeping the crowd like a hawk. Devon straightened, feeling the weight of the moment settle in. The judge began calling cases, traffic fines, petty disputes, his tone clipped and mechanical. A white woman in jeans slipped in late, unnoticed. A man in a wrinkled blazer followed, taking a seat without a glance from the bench. Devon jotted a quick note, his pen scratching the paper. At 9:20, it was his turn. "Devon Clarke," the bailiff barked. He stood, smoothing his tie, and strode to the podium. The air shifted, thicker, heavier. Green's eyes locked onto him, narrowing slightly. "You're late, Mr. Clarke," the judge snapped, his voice like a whip. "This court doesn't run on your schedule. That's $900 for contempt." Devon blinked, the number hitting him like a punch. "Your Honor, I apologize. I was delayed by an urgent federal matter, a human trafficking case." He kept his tone steady, professional. Green leaned forward, his lips curling. "Excuses don't change rules. You think your job's more important than this court?" The room stilled. Devon's jaw tightened, but he held his ground. "No, Your Honor. I'd like to present my case on the fine." Green cut him off with a wave. "We'll get to that. First, you pay for disrespecting my time." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Devon glanced around. Eyes darted away, but he caught the unease. The woman who'd slipped in late scrolled her phone, untouched. The blazer guy smirked. This wasn't about tardiness. It was about him. He stepped back, mind racing. $900 for 5 minutes? In a municipal court? Something was off, way off. As he returned to his seat, he opened his notebook again, not for the tax case, but for this. Whatever Judge Green was playing at, Devon wasn't letting it slide. Not today. Devon Clarke sat rigid in the back row of room 108, the hum of the Albany courthouse fading into a dull roar in his ears. His pen hovered over the notebook, the $900 contempt fine still burning in his mind like a fresh wound. $900 for being 5 minutes late. He'd seen harsher penalties in federal court for actual crimes, not a rushed morning. Judge Edward Green's voice droned on, calling the next case, a parking ticket dispute, his tone flat and disinterested. Devon's eyes flicked to the clock, 9:35 a.m., then to the room. The young white woman who'd slipped in late at 9 o'clock sat near the front, tapping away on her phone, her posture relaxed. The guy in the wrinkled blazer, who'd strolled in after Devon, leaned back in his seat, arms crossed, smirking as Green waved off his excuse with a curt, "Just pay the fine. No reprimand. No $900 hammer drop." Devon's grip tightened on the pen, the ink bleeding slightly as he pressed too hard. He scribbled, "Female, white, late 9 o'clock, no penalty. Male, white, late 9:05, $1.50 fine, no contempt." Then his own entry, Clarke, black, late 8:55, $900 contempt. The pattern glared back at him from the page, stark and undeniable. This wasn't about tardiness. It was about who he was, or what Green saw when he looked at him. Devon's years as a federal prosecutor kicked in, his mind shifting from shock to calculation. He'd spent a decade dismantling corruption, trafficking rings, and liars in suits. Always with evidence, always with precision. Now, that instinct turned inward, dissecting the courtroom like a crime scene. Green's sharp words replayed in his head. "You think your job's more important than this court?" The judge hadn't even glanced at the others. Devon's pulse quickened, a mix of anger and clarity washing over him. This wasn't a one-off. It was deliberate. He scanned the room again. A middle-aged black woman in a faded coat sat 2 rows ahead, her hands twisting a crumpled summons. She'd been fined $300 for a noise complaint, her neighbor's barking dog, not even hers. Green had barely let her speak before slamming the gavel. Next to her, an older white man with a similar summons got a $75 slap on the wrist and a gruff "keep it down." Devon's pen moved faster, capturing every detail, the names, the fines, the judge's dismissive tone. The evidence was piling up, and it wasn't just in his head. He caught a few eyes darting his way, some curious, some uneasy, like they knew what he'd seen but wouldn't dare say it. At 10 o'clock, Green called a recess. The room exhaled, people shuffling out for coffee or a smoke. Devon stayed put, flipping through his notes. The house fine, his original reason for being here, felt trivial now. That $1,200 penalty was still on the table, but this was bigger. He pulled out his phone, texting Mia. "Need court records from Green's cases. Last 3 years. Finis demographics timestams." Her reply came fast. On it. "What's up?" He typed back. "Something's rotten here. I'm digging." As the crowd thinned, a soft voice broke his focus. "You're not wrong, you know." Devon looked up. A woman, mid-40s, graying hair pulled tight, glasses perched on her nose, stood nearby, clutching a stack of files. The court clerk. Her name tag read Linda Marshall. She glanced over her shoulder, then leaned closer. "I've been here 10 years. What happened to you?" "It's not new." Her voice trembled, but her eyes were steady. Devon lowered his phone. "You've seen this before?" Linda nodded, barely perceptible. "Every day. Finds it harder if you're, well, you know." She hesitated, then slid a folded paper from her stack onto his bench. "Look at this later." "Not here." Before he could respond, she hurried off, disappearing into the clerk's office. Devon unfolded it. A handwritten list. Dates, names, fines. A quick scan showed Jackson, black, $400, late 5 minutes next to Thompson, white, $50, late 10 minutes. His breath caught. Proof. Right there in ink. The bailiff's call snapped him back. Court resuming. Green returned, his heavy footsteps echoing. Devon tucked the paper into his briefcase, his resolve hardening. This wasn't just about him anymore. It was a pattern, a system, and he had the first thread to unravel it. As Green resumed, Devon's mind raced. He could fight the house fine later. Right now, he was building a case against the judge himself. At 10:15, Green called him again. "Clarke, your tax matter. Let's make this quick." Devon stood, briefcase in hand, his voice calm but edged with steel. "Your Honor, I'll address that. But first, I'd like clarification on the contempt fine. Seems inconsistent." A hush fell over the room. Green's face darkened, his gavel twitching in his hand. "You questioning me, boy?" The word landed like a slap, and Devon's eyes narrowed. "Game on." Devon Clarke stood at the podium in room 108, the Albany courthouse buzzing with attention so thick it felt like static. Judge Edward Green's gavel hovered, his face a storm cloud after Devon's pointed question about the contempt fine's inconsistency. The word boy still hung in the air, a jagged edge that sliced through the room's pretense of order. Devon's pulse thumped, but his expression stayed cool, honed by years of facing down defense attorneys and hostile witnesses. "I'm asking for fairness, Your Honor," he said, voice steady. "If rules apply, they should apply to everyone." Green's eyes flashed, his knuckles whitening around the gavel. "You're treading thin ice, Mr. Clarke. This court doesn't answer to you." He banged the gavel hard enough to make the clerk jump. "Your tax matter. Present it or sit down." Devon nodded, sliding his folder onto the podium. He walked through the evidence, tax records, photos of his grandfather's house, a city notice-riddled with errors. "The $1,200 fine lacks basis," he concluded. "I request a review." Green barely glanced at the papers. "Denied. Pay it or appeal elsewhere." "Next case." Devon stepped back, the dismissal stinging but not surprising. He'd expected resistance. As he returned to his seat, he caught Linda Marshall's eye, the clerk's nervous glance darting between him and Green. Her handwritten list burned a hole in his briefcase. The courtroom churned on, but Devon's focus had shifted. This wasn't about the house anymore. It was about the rot beneath Green's bench. By noon, the session ended. Devon slipped out, the crisp March air hitting him as he dialed Mia. "Got those records yet?" he asked, pacing the courthouse steps. "Pulling them now," she replied. 3 years of fines from Green's court, race, gender, income brackets. "It's a mess, Devon. What are you chasing?" He exhaled. "Justice. Call me when you've got it." He hung up, unfolding Linda's list again. The numbers leapt out. Black defendants fined triple, sometimes quadruple, what white ones paid for identical infractions. His jaw tightened. This was a gold mine. Back at his office, Devon spread the list across his desk, cross-referencing it with his own notes. A pattern emerged like a neon sign. Green's courtroom was a machine, grinding down anyone who didn't fit his mold. He called a colleague, Sarah Nguyen, a sharp civil rights attorney. "Sarah, I need a second pair of eyes. Something's off in Albany Municipal." She arrived within the hour, her brow furrowing as she scanned the data. "This isn't sloppy. It's systemic," she said. "You're poking a bear, Devon." He smirked faintly. "Good. Bears bleed too." That evening, Mia's files landed in his inbox. Hundreds of cases, a digital avalanche. Devon pored over them until midnight, coffee going cold beside him. The stats were damning. Black defendants fine an average of $450 for minor violations. White ones $120. Late arrivals? Green ignored white tardiness 80% of the time, but hit black defendants with contempt 9 out of 10. Sarah was right. This wasn't random. It was a playbook. The next morning, a bombshell dropped. A law student who'd been in court tweeted a thread about Devon's clash with Green. Federal prosecutor calls out judge for unequal fines. I saw it. Black man fined $900. White latecomers ignored. This is real. It went viral, racking up thousands of retweets. By noon, hashtag Albany bias trended, and local news vans rolled up to the courthouse. Devon's phone buzzed nonstop. Reporters, activists, strangers with their own stories. My brother got fined $600 for a broken taillight. One email read. White guy next to him, $50. Then came a call that chilled him. An unknown number, a raspy voice. Drop this, Clarke, or you'll regret it. Click. Devon froze, staring at the phone. A threat? From who? Green's allies? He saved the voicemail, forwarding it to Sarah. They're scared, she said over the line. Means you're close. He nodded to himself, adrenaline spiking. Scared or not, they picked the wrong fight. He met Linda at a diner that night, her hands shaky as she slid him a USB drive. 10 years of notes, she whispered. I kept it quiet too long. Fines, comments. He called black folks trouble right to their faces. I'm done hiding. Devon took it, his voice firm. You're not alone anymore. She managed a faint smile, then slipped away into the dark. Back home, Devon plugged in the drive. Audio clips, scam logs. Linda had documented everything. One file stopped him cold. Green's voice, gruff and casual, mid-hearing. These people always waste my time. The defendant? A black woman, fined $500 for a parking ticket. Devon's fists clenched. This wasn't just bias. It was malice. And he had the proof to bury it. Devon Clarke strode into the Albany courthouse a week later, the air crackling with anticipation. It was March 26th, 2025, and room 108 felt like a pressure cooker ready to blow. Word had spread. Reporters lined the steps. Protesters chanted, "Equal justice now." Outside, and the Judicial Review Commission had descended on Judge Edward Green's domain. Devon's gray suit was crisp, his briefcase heavy with evidence. Linda's USB drive, Mia's data, and a stack of sworn statements from former defendants. The anonymous threat, drop this or you'll regret it, echoed in his mind, but it only steeled him further. They wanted him scared. He was done playing small. The session wasn't a regular docket. The commission had called an emergency hearing after Devon's findings hit their desk. Pages of stats showing black defendants fined 300% more than white ones. Audio of Green's slurs, Linda's decade-long logs. Devon had spent days with Sarah and Gwynn, refining the case, turning raw data into a blade. Now he stood at the podium, facing Green for the last time. The judge's broad frame slumped slightly, his usual swagger dulled by the weight of scrutiny. 3 commission members sat to his left, stone-faced, pens poised over notepads. Green glared at Devon, his voice gravelly. This some grandstand, Clarke? You think you can waltz in and smear me? Devon met his stare, unflinching. No smear, Your Honor. Just facts. He slid a folder forward. 5 years of records. Black defendants fined $450 on average for minor infractions. White ones, $120. Late arrivals? You hit me with $900, ignored others who walked in after. Explain that. A murmur rippled through the room. Spectators, clerks, even the bailiff shifted uncomfortably. Green's face reddened. Numbers don't tell the whole story. I run a tight ship. Some need more discipline. Devon raised an eyebrow, pulling out the USB. Discipline? Let's hear you. He nodded to a tech who plugged it in. Green's voice crackled through the speakers. These people always waste my time. Gasps punctured the silence. The clip played on. A black woman's plea for leniency cut off. A $500 fine slapped down. Devon paused it. That's from 2023. Her name's Tanya Evans. Same day, a white man got $75 for the same offense. Discipline or bias? The commission chair, a stern woman named Helen Ortiz, leaned forward. Judge Green, respond. Green stammered, his gavel idle. I don't recall every case. This is cherry picking. Devon pressed on. 10 years of logs from your clerk say otherwise. Linda Marshall documented it. Names, dates, your words. Trouble, you called us. Over and over. Linda sat in the back, pale but nodding, her courage now public. Green slammed his fist on the bench. This is a witch hunt. I've served this court 25 years. You don't get to ruin me. His outburst cracked the room open. Reporters scribbled furiously. Phones buzzed with live updates. Ortiz cut in, voice like steel. Enough. We've seen the data, heard the recordings. Mr. Clarke, anything else? Devon pulled out a stack of affidavits. 20 statements. Black mothers fined $600 for nothing. Kids humiliated in open court. White defendants waved off. It's not one day. It's a system. The room held its breath. Green's eyes darted, his bravado crumbling. I didn't mean. He trailed off, sinking back. Ortiz scribbled a note, then addressed him. Judge Green, you're suspended pending review. Step down now. The gavel fell from his hand, clattering to the floor. Devon exhaled, the weight lifting slightly. He'd landed the blow, but the fight wasn't over. Outside, the crowd erupted. Cheers, chants, a few angry yells. News vans beamed the scene live. Albany judge suspended amid bias probe. Devon's phone lit up. Mia, you did it. Sarah, round one's yours. Then a text from an unknown number. This isn't the end. His gut twisted, but he pocketed it. Threat or not, he'd shaken the foundation. Back in the emptying courtroom, Linda approached, her voice soft. I was scared to speak. You made it possible. Devon smiled faintly. We both did. A young reporter lingered, notepad out. Mr. Clarke, why risk it? Devon paused, thinking of Grandpa James. Because silence lets this fester. Someone had to say enough. As he left, the chants grew louder. Hashtag Albany bias trended nationwide, stories pouring in from other courts. Green was down, but the machine he'd built wasn't. Devon gripped his briefcase tighter. This was the showdown, but the war was just beginning. Underscore. 3 months later, on June 26, 2025, Devon Clarke stood outside the Albany courthouse, the summer sun warming his face. The building looked different. Fresh paint brightened the once dull walls, and a new sign gleamed near the entrance. Equal justice is everyone's right. Inside, room 108 buzzed with a quieter energy. No trace of Judge Edward Green's heavy gavel or icy glare. Devon's gray suit was swapped for a lighter blazer, his briefcase lighter too, but the weight of what he'd started still lingered in his chest. Today wasn't about a fight. It was about what came after. Green's suspension had snowballed into his resignation within weeks of the hearing. The Judicial Review Commission's final report, released in April, was a sledgehammer. Over a decade, Green had fined black defendants 300% more than white ones for identical offenses, denied leniency to minorities 85% of the time, and left a trail of racial slurs in court records. The evidence, Linda's logs, Devon's data, those audio clips, had been undeniable. Green's curt statement, I retire to serve the court's best interests, fooled no one. Protesters had cheered. Headlines screamed, biased judge out. Devon hadn't celebrated. A man was gone, but the system wasn't fixed yet. Change came fast. Albany's courts rolled out reforms. Mandatory bias training for all staff, led by experts who dissected subtle prejudices. Random audits of fines and rulings with public reports, and a civilian oversight board. Lawyers, activists, even former defendants, to watchdog proceedings. Devon had pushed for that last one, testifying before the state board. Justice isn't blind if we don't watch it, he'd said. They'd listened. Data trickled in by June. Fines for black defendants dropped 40%, payment plans approved twice as often. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Devon's role shifted too. His office wall now held the framed $900 contempt fine, not a trophy, but a reminder. Below it, a photo from a law school talk. Students grinning, holding a banner for the Clarke Civil Rights Clinic they'd founded in his name. He'd become a reluctant symbol. Invitations poured in for speeches, panels, community forums. At one, a black teen approached him, eyes bright. I want to be a lawyer now. You show me we can fight back. Devon clasped his shoulder. Fight smart, kid. That's how we win. The ripple spread beyond Albany. South Carolina, Ohio, Texas. Courts face scrutiny as activists dug into records, inspired by hashtag Albany bias. National news ran segments. One prosecutor stand sparks reform. Devon stayed focused, still prosecuting trafficking cases, but the emails kept coming. One stuck with him, a retired judge from Georgia. I saw this for years, stayed quiet. You gave me hope too late, but you gave it. He filed it under impact, a growing folder of voices he'd never expected to reach. That afternoon, he spoke at the courthouse's new ethics center unveiling, named partly for his efforts. The crowd, judges, clerks, locals, filled the revamped lobby. Linda Marshall, now heading a transparency program, smiled from the front row. Justice isn't laws, Devon began, voice clear. It's how we treat people, fairly, with dignity. I stood up because my grandfather taught me right from wrong. This, he gestured to the sign, is what right looks like. Applause thundered, but Devon's eyes caught a familiar face, an older black man, the same one who'd watched him that first day. After, the man approached, voice thick. 40 years I came here, saw nothing change. You did this. He pressed a worn photo into Devon's hand. Him and his wife outside that same courthouse, decades ago. Thank you. Devon nodded, throat tight. We all did. Later, at his desk, he opened a letter from a Chicago public defender. Your fight lit a fire here. We're auditing our courts now. You reminded me why do this. Devon leaned back, the photo and letter side by side. It wasn't about him. It never had been. It was about Tanya Evans fined $500 for nothing. About Linda, silent too long. About that teen dreaming of law school. The system wasn't whole, but cracks were healing. Outside, Albany hummed on, the courthouse a quieter beacon. Devon glanced at the framed, fine one last time. Enough, he'd said that day. And enough had become a movement.